Hey everybody, my name is Kara Brown. I am an urban fantasy author and I'm here to talk to you about how to get an agent. This question was brought up in one of my prior videos from James, who wanted to know more about how to land movie deals and all that jazz, and unfortunately if you want to do any of that, the first thing that you need to do is you need to have an agent. Before I dive into that, I do want to make an announcement that my writing sister Rebel Carter has come out with a new book called Heart in Hand. It's out on paperback and it's out on Kindle. I'm going to have a link down below if you would consider reading it, purchasing it, and leaving a review. It would be greatly appreciated by the entire writer family. Thank you. So one of the big things when it comes to literary agents is that when we think about them, we think of them more like a fairy godmother that comes in and kind of pats us on the head with their wand and just makes things happen. And sometimes it works that way and sometimes it doesn't. If you are looking to get traditionally published by one of the big publishers, you will need to have a literary agent. And the major reason for this is because a lot of publishers won't talk to you if you do a submission on your own. They want to talk to somebody who already knows the industry, understands how they work in particular, and has the ability in the background to be able to discuss the contract and all the contract details. Unfortunately, we as writers do not always have that. Agents are basically our way to get around the big gatekeeper that stops us from being able to talk to the publisher. And you can just, all the publishers are going to immediately tell you if they take submissions with or without an agent, and a lot of them don't. That's just the basic fact of how it is. A literary agent is also very useful in acting as a go-between between you and the publisher, you and the editor, and you and anybody else. And this can be really useful in a couple of situations. For example, if you get your manuscript back from your editor and you think it's complete garbage, but they think it's great, it's going to be really hard for you to go to the editor and say that they did a bad job, but you can get the agent to go over and basically negate that for you, and they play the role of the bad cop where you don't have to. Having said that, agents are different. They are individuals, they have different tastes, they have different preferences, and they have different ways of executing business. One agent may be kind of like very light, not communicating with you very often, and if that's what you want, then that's fine. Where others are very like holding your hand and walking you through the entire process. It's really important that when you're trying to get a literary agent that you actually do your research and understand how it is that they conduct business, so that way you two are not butting heads later on in the future. Now, before I dive into all the ways that you can actually have an agent, I am going to preface this by telling you that I do not have an agent, and I do not have an agent because I don't want one, and I will explain that a little bit more towards the end of the video. Now, the very first thing that you need to do before you actually start querying an agent is you need to write a book, and not only do you need to write the book, but you need to edit the book, you need to polish it, and you need to make sure that it is the best product that it can be, because you can write a dazzling pitch letter, but if your book is complete garbage, then you're just wasting everyone's time. So make sure that when you submit your book, it is to the best of your ability and it's as good as you can get it to be. Ways that you can polish it can basically involve you obviously proofreading it, reading out loud, taking it to a critique group, getting feedback from beta readers, and you can hire a freelance editor if you really want to. There's been some debate about that back and forth in the community, if a author should actually take their work to an editor before they send it to a publisher or not. Some schools of thought say that you shouldn't do that because the publisher editor is actually supposed to be the one that edits the book, where everybody says that if it's not the best book that it can be the first time around, it doesn't get picked up. And one of the things that I'll share with you on that is that it really just depends on the person that you're submitting it to, and unfortunately even like the very best book can be rejected just because somebody stubbed their toe before they came into the office. So it's damned if you do and damned if you don't. Now, when you pitch for an agent, you need to make sure that that agent is fitting basically all the categories that your book falls into. And agents are not like a multi-genre being. They usually focus on a particular niche that they like reading, and they want to stick with that niche, and they're going to tell you in their agent bios what kind of works that they're looking for. So do make sure that when you are sending your work to somebody, that it is somebody who actually wants your work. Trying to send your urban fantasy book to somebody who's looking for medical technology in today's society is probably not going to be the best match for what you need. Now, taking one side step to researching agents is you do need to research the submission requirements for the agent and the agency itself, because not everybody has the same submission requirements. Some people only want you to send a query letter. Some people want a query letter in the first 5 to 10 pages, sometimes 20. Some people want you to go ahead and have the blurb. They want you to tell you who the target audience is. You need to make sure that you are paying attention to what it is that they want from you in the submission. And I've seen this, unfortunately, where somebody says, I just want 5 pages, and an author will send 20. If you show that you don't have the ability to follow simple instructions, an agent is very likely to just kick you right then and there. Some of you may be asking, where exactly do I find these agents at? Like, where are good places for me to start? And the easiest place I'm going to tell you to start is going to be this book right here. There's a new edition that comes out every year that has all the agents and all the publishers that are in there. And the really nice thing about this book is that it actually has the submission guidelines in the book, along with who is looking for what, genre-wise, and it's really a good resource. I don't know if they have it in public libraries, but you should be able to request it if you can't afford to buy a copy of your own. But great tool, I would really recommend it. Now, once you do your research, you are going to make a handy-dandy list of agencies and probably people that you can apply to. And I would not recommend applying to all those people at once. What I did as a tactic was that I would send out a query letter once a day to a particular person. And the reason I did that was because it allowed me to personalize my pitch letter, it let me do additional research, and it also helped me catch mistakes that may have been on the query letter that I didn't catch with the previous submission. And you definitely want to make sure that you are sending a very polished pitch letter. I am not going to dive too deep right now in this video about what your pitch letter needs to look like, but what I will tell you is that it needs to include the following things. It needs to be personalized to the person that you're sending it to. You need to make sure that you spelled their name right. That happens a lot. You need to tell them about the book. You need to include things like, word count, but not exact word count. The rough estimate into the 10,000s is totally fine. You also need to tell them just a little bit about you and who you think that the target audience for the book is. So that way the agent has an overall idea of what it is that they're reading. There are a lot of pitch letters that go out where people are just kind of like, hi, I'm so-and-so, and I'm very passionate about this project, and I really appreciate your consideration. And they didn't mention the book. They didn't talk about the plot, didn't say anything about it. And those are honestly elements that you do need to include in your pitch letter when you're talking to them. And again, if you really want me to, I will just make a whole video about how to write a pitch letter, and we can talk about that more in depth. So we'll assume that you did the research, you personalized the letter, you followed the submission guidelines, and you sent your baby off to the agent for their review. Two things will happen. You will either get an automatic email that says you will get a reply within 6 weeks, and if you do not get a reply in 6 weeks, just assume that it's rejected. You will get a reply in a couple of days where it either will be accepted or rejected, or you will hear literally nothing at all. Now, in the case of the situation where you do get rejected, you may just get a simple note that says, thank you for the consideration. However, we are not going to proceed with these works at these times. Or you will also get a rejection where they actually talk about what didn't work in the manuscript. The fact that an agent actually took the time to give you some kind of feedback on your manuscript is pretty big, and I would take that as a big positive, because if they're interested enough to give you feedback, then they have some interest in your project. Though one thing I would make sure that you take into consideration, if it says at the bottom after the feedback, it says please change and resubmit. If it says please change and resubmit, then they want to see your manuscript when you've revised it, but if it says good luck to you in the future, then don't resubmit at all. In any situation, should you get rejected from an agent, please be sure that you do not argue back with them. There's nothing like making a bad impression to basically screw over your future. In the industry, and well, actually in any industry, people do talk to each other, and if you prove to be immature or irresponsible or unprofessional, that is going to spread like wildfire throughout everybody, and they're going to take that into account when they're looking at your submission later. If you look like you're going to be more trouble than you're worth, they may just cancel you or just reject you on that front alone. So because we did mention reputation and basically how you are presenting yourself, we do have to mention social media just a little tiny bit. I do know authors who have been rejected because of their online presence. And I'm not saying that they were rejected because they didn't have a lot of followers. I'm saying that they were rejected because they proved to be abrasive online. There was one individual who basically would ask very controversial questions and then provoke the people who responded to the question in a way that was meant to rile a very unpleasant response. They were basically trolling people, and that doesn't really look good, and a lot of people don't want to associate with somebody who goes out of their way to piss people off. So when you're online and you're doing whatever it is that you're doing online, please conduct yourself with an air of maturity. Do not go out to provoke other people just because it's fun. If you really feel the need to do that, make another account that's not associated with your authorhood at all. The final thing I do want to talk about when it comes to looking for an agent is the warning sign that you are talking to a scammer. So it doesn't really take anything to be a literary agent. It's kind of like identify as a literary agent and boom, you are a literary agent. There are no qualifications, no exams, no certifications, no nothing. You literally can just say, I am a literary agent. This means that when you are looking for literary agents, that the research part that I talked about is exceptionally important. You definitely want to check out what these people's backgrounds are, who they associate with, what is their experience with publishing? Did they work for a publisher in the mailroom, or did they work on the ground floor for publishing? What is their background? How are they qualified? And the big red flag that you are talking to a scammer agent is when they ask for money up front. Absolutely no literary agent is going to ask for money up front. And the reason they're not going to ask for money up front is because they should be making a percentage of profit off of your success. The age of fee agents, as they used to be called, is over. In fact, it's been gone for a very long time. So if you encounter an agent who says that they will get you published for a fee, you are talking to a scammer. Thank them for the time, move on with your life. Earlier in the video, you heard me say that I do not have a literary agent, and I do not have one by choice. But trust me, it's not for lack of trying. When I was initially attempting to get published with the traditional publishers out here in America, I was querying a lot of different agents. This list that I'm showing you, not even the very tip of the iceberg. I must have submitted to probably 60 people, and I only got 30 responses. But the big reason that I actually do not have a literary agent is due to the fact that I am with two indie publishers right now, and when you're working with a very small group of people, you really don't need a middleman. I mean, I can literally talk to the CEO of both of these companies at any time I want to, like right now, like I could text them. And when you're working in that kind of environment, having a middleman to talk to you and the small publisher doesn't really make a lot of sense, especially when you're paying them like whatever percentage of royalties that they're making off of your profit. I don't really feel the need at this point in my life to pay somebody to do something that I can easily do. I can, as I said earlier, easily reach out and talk to the publishers. I can talk to my editor. Like, these are not things that I have a problem with right now. If later on in the future I find that I'm going to need an agent to help represent me in other things that are going to require a lot more legalese than I actually know right now, I will probably start shopping around for one then. But until then, I don't need one. The very last thing that I do want to touch on, and this is a question that I frequently get at the critique group from new people who are coming to the group, and they're just kind of branching out and they're learning things as they're going. And the question that I usually hear from them is it possible for a self-published author to actually get an agent? And my answer to that is, it depends. I was being the nosy person that I am, and I was going through some articles, and I was kind of reading about that at one point, and somebody wrote that only the best of the best books are the ones that get published with the traditional publish, and if you do a self-published book, you're better off leaving it self-published. So in regards to best of the best, no, you're absolutely wrong on that. Not to mention that Chicken Soup for the Soul, that was a self-published book that took off right away. There is a author who writes a fantasy series who is very well off. He does not need a publisher, and he continues to self-publish. And he is such a big deal that people are trying to actually sign him on, and he's just constantly said, no, I don't need you. If you write a really good book, it does really well, you will be approached by people who are looking to represent you. Jenna Marassi proved that when The Savior's Champion came out last year, because after the book came out and it was such a success, people were coming to her and asking if they could represent her, to which she very respectfully declined all these offers, as she has said in her videos. This does show, unfortunately, a slightly obviously one purpose side of the industry where people are looking to make money, and that's just how business works. If they can see that something's working, they're going to want a slice of that pie. Whether you decide to let these people have that pie or not, that's really a choice only you can make. Earlier in the video, I did mention that an agent will basically reject your manuscript if you give them an easy reason to. I said that they could stub their toe, be in a bad mood, or you could have spelled their name wrong on the pitch letter that you sent them. You, my beautiful viewer, I would actually be very curious to know of what reasons that you've heard that agents have rejected a manuscript, and just kind of share that in the comment section down below, just so that way people are kind of aware of the things that agents are looking for. Obviously there are things that I know, but as I mentioned earlier, every agent is different. They want different things, they're looking for different qualities, so kind of keeping all these things in mind is going to be a lot more beneficial as we progress forward. Brings me to the end of the video. I would like to thank you for actually watching. If you found this content to be useful and you are not already subscribed, please feel free to subscribe. If you would like to know when my videos come out, not, there's a notification bell down there. I usually upload videos on Friday at this point. And if you thought that this content would be useful for someone else, please feel free to share it with them. I am more than happy to spread whatever knowledge that I have to the community in general. I mentioned earlier that Rebel Carter came out with a book. I also came out with a short story recently. I have a link down below if you would like to purchase and leave a review. That would be really helpful for me. I would deeply appreciate it. Definitely in need of reviews right now. If you are not already signed up for the newsletter, please feel free to. I have monthly giveaways for all the people that are signed up for the newsletter. I would show you the prizes, but I am waiting for one right now. It's still in the mail. It'll get here when it gets here. If you would like to join me on my Subscribe Star and throw a couple dollars my way, I would really appreciate that. The Subscribe Star basically works like a fluid newsletter where you find out stuff and a little bit extra on top of that, depending on which tier that you sign up for, on there before it comes out anywhere else. So things like the book cover that is in the works right now, deleted scenes, art, all that jazz, that's going to be on there. But that is Kara Brown done talking for the day. I thank you for watching. I hope you all have a rockin' weekend.